I will call this meeting of the regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order for Monday, May 19th, 2025. Could I get a motion to go into executive session, please? Okay, Mike moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor? Okay, so we'll go to our other link and then return to this meeting very shortly. Thanks. Could I get a motion, please, to return to open session? Okay, Marcy moves, Monica seconds, all in favor? Okay, very good. So next up on our agenda is an agenda review item, which is an update on our flooding projects. Is Mr. Gentile on this evening? There he is. Ed? Well, I saw him. There he is. Ed, can you hear us okay? And the rest of you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Ed?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, Ed, thank you for joining. So the purpose of this meeting or this segment of our session is to just provide the board an update on where we are on our two major flooding projects, Salt Bucks and Tilly Pond, if you will, and just give a sense of where those things stand. I want to make sure you guys have a chance to ask any questions that are top of mind. But Ed, why don't you give us a short overview and we'll see what questions come up.
Okay, I sure will. Thanks for inviting me in here tonight. First one, I'll start with the Salt Box project. I'm just going to give you a quick overview. It works in the area or is included in the areas like Salt Box, Coach Lamp Lane, Gardner, Pleasant, Thomasina, Du Bois, and Patricia. It's about 55 acres of a watershed. So our designer, Ty and Bond, is working on a fee of about $184,000, and it's being paid through the ARPA funds. Our current design right now is about 75% complete. We recently, to keep us moving, we recently just performed some soil sampling at the Seagate outlet area at the Holly Pond. And we found that there is adequate support for soil there for our head wall, and the sediment that we found there was below the residential restriction level, which means we can treat it as normal fill. So that was some really good news. So with that information, what was kind of holding us back from moving forward to deal with the regulatory bodies, we developed our water handling plan for that area. It's a very sensitive area, needed a specific plan. And part of that plan, of course, is going to include permanent and temporary easements. Work is going to include some sheet piling as a coffer dam to control the water. And we're going to be doing some dredging of that area about 15 feet out past the outlet of the pipe. Bypass pumping is going to be included to dewater the inlet area, as well as the flow coming downstream through the piping system. And soil erosion control measures and sediment control, hay bales, construction entrance, silt fencing, all included in this plan. So as you see, this was a very particular part of the design that needed to be completed before we could submit to the DEP, Army Corps of Engineers, and our own EPC. So talking about regulatory bodies and their approvals, we already have the SHPO approval. That's the State Historical Preservation Office. We got that in January of this year. We are submitting to the DEP now that our water handling plan is about completed for what they call a preliminary application meeting. We're looking to do that and set that up for mid-June. We are also preparing, with that preliminary meeting, we'll be preparing a formal submission to the DEP and the Army Corps sometime in July and August of this year. Approvals can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. I'll know better after our preliminary meeting with the DEP on how that's going to go time-wise. And also, we're working on scheduling a meeting with the EPC staff and their commission before we submit the application to talk about submittal inclusions, plan-wise and documentation-wise, and what the process should be. And that we're planning to do that in mid-June also. So we're continuing to work on easements throughout the project required for construction. We will be having to come back to fund appraisals and the damages for those easements sometime in the near future. We don't have an estimate yet. So once we have that put together, I'll be sitting with the finance director and talk about coming before you folks, talk about transferring funds to do that work. And our tentative construction funding request schedule, I say request, I'm trying to get it so that we can include it in the capital funding for FY27, which means this December. So that this is all a tight schedule right now, but that's kind of how I see it working and laying out for us. It's pretty much kind of an overall update on what we have. Other than we are working with the utility companies on some selected crossings. The one in particular that that's giving us a little bit more to think about is for Eversource. We have an electric line going between Coach Lamp and Salt Box Lane East. That is a really tight easement in there, and the electric's in there also. So we're working on that one at this time. I'm here to answer any questions on that project if you have any.
And once you get through, let's say you have all the proposals and we've gotten bids and construction is going to start on a date. Do you have a sense for how long the actual construction work would take once you have a go signal?
I think we're looking at a 12-month period.
Okay.
If we can work through the winter, that's even better. So, but we don't count those dates. So we're looking at a year time, and that's still looking the same as we've gone through the design process. We've eliminated some interior easement areas for work that were kind of tight between homes and fences. We found some alternate routes that seemed to work more to our liking and benefited the town more with regards to cost. So we worked on that also. So we're still looking around a year.
Okay. Questions for Ed on that project?
Ed, I have a couple. Okay. Is Ty on doing all of the permitting?
They are working with us to do the permitting, yes.
Okay. And are they all temporary easements?
No, there are some permanent easements that are needed. Basically, I think there's quite a few. There's a couple pipe locations on private properties that don't have easements right now that we have to upgrade those pipes. So we're going to have to go not only to get permanent easement for the existing pipe, but once it's replaced, it'll be a permanent easement for the new pipe that's going.
Okay.
We've
Thanks.
identified them. We haven't spoken to the neighbors just yet. We did send them out letters a couple months ago, letting them know that we'll be reaching out. And now that we're going to meet with the DEP, we're going to start those conversations for the easements again.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay, terrific. Okay, Ed, next project?
Sure.
Go ahead, you had a question?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for the update, Ed. I know a lot of people in my area happen to live in Gardner, full disclosure, are very interested to hear the update. So thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Let's talk about the one downtown is the Tilly Pond Grove Street area. This project system runs from the Tilly Pond and West Avenue underneath the Metro North Railroad tracks to Squab Lane. And our new line from there is going to take us down Grove Street, Day Street, and across the Boston Post Road. Now, I point that out because there's a bullet point where we're going to talk about utility conflicts and where we're finding some of them. Through the Center Street South parking lot to Old Kings Highway South, and then discharging into the Goodwise River. This design fee is set around $213,000. Again, this is ARPA funds being used for this design. Our current design is about 35% complete, and we have about 12 months left on this design. The major piece, of course, as you all can realize, is the jacking of the pipe underneath the Metro North Railroad track. So that's going to take the longest amount of time, but we are moving this project forward. We're currently working on refining the design to eliminate a lot of the utility crossing conflicts and concerns, particularly in the Boston Post Road, where there's multiple sanitary sewers, there's telephone, electric, and storm drainage already there. And Old Kings Highway South, where the existing 345 kV line for Eversource runs through. Corbin project had their hands full trying to work around that. We will probably run into the same once we do a couple test bits out there, but the good news is there is a current crossing of a storm line that is generally about the same size. So with any luck, we'll be able to get through that location. We have previously met with the DOT Rails and Metro North engineers to discuss the railroad track crossing. That was about 9 months ago. They gave us some direction. We're working on that also. Design plans, contract specifics with regards to jacking the pipe and so on. And our tentative construction funding request schedule is looking at possibly the FY28 capital funding request a year after the request for salt box. And I think if in my capital improvement plan, I think that's kind of how I have them lined up right now. That's all I have on that project. Any questions on that one?
Aside from utility conflicts, are there any other technical issues with that particular project? The reason I ask is just the Metro North and trying to go under those tracks sounds technically difficult. Is there any concern on your end, or is it really just grinding through the process?
It's grinding through the process. They had gotten approval previously on a same type of project over at Northern Heights Station just before I came to Darien in 2012, I believe, in that area, in that timeline. So it can be done. Approvals can be gained. But it's just a long, drawn-out process that you have to work through with Metro North, with DOT Rails.
Okay. Questions for Ed on this?
No questions, but I will say I did drive over the new Hanson Bridge Road this morning for the first time, and it's beautiful. Well worth the wait. You guys did a really nice job, all the stonework, and it looks great. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. I want to point out that as much as I had a lot to do with the front end, the back end was Darien Ostafine, the assistant director. He did a phenomenal job running that project. As you all know, it has turned out very, very well. It's turned out very
it looks great. It looks beautiful. I'm sure the neighbors are very appreciative to have that road open too.
I don't know. I think some of them like the dead end.
This is true too. You're right. The traffic has gone up on that road. I agree.
I did warn them ahead of time that we go back to two-way traffic.
Yeah, so thanks for me on that as well. But just thank you for working on these flooding projects. They take time and persistence and patience. And I know we've had several meetings and discussions about it, but just to hear this update to explain what's going on, but also gives us a chance to tell residents and neighbors who are going to be benefiting from these projects. They do take time, as we've said many times in the past, and just to be patient on it. We'll try to do these updates at various points in the future, but have patience. We will get through this, and these projects will get done eventually.
And John, I don't know if we mentioned for Saltbox, we do have a grant that we obtained. I think you helped obtain it. I think $500,000 from the state. I think that's a good start. There should be more. There could be more out there.
It is, and a great thank you to our state representative, Tracy Amara. She was the one who applied for and pushed for us to get that grant, and $500,000 is not chump change, and we really appreciate that. And if anyone's listening out there and wants to extend more grants to support the town of Darien, you'll have a welcome town in that regard. So thank you. All right, Ed, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Hey,
Yes.
I just want to say, on behalf of everybody, it's National Public Works Week, and I caught that somewhere. And just thank you and your crew for everything you do for our town. It's really appreciated.
Yep. Thank you, Monica. I did not know that. Kudos to you.
I just
Well,
saw
on
it
behalf of
in
the
it.
entire board, the town, and all 22,000 residents, thank you, Ed, to your whole crew for what you guys do. You're fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
All right. Take care. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. First Selectman's report, a couple of notes here. So we had a couple of meetings pertaining to the Americans with Disabilities Act. So WestCog, which is our form of county government, if you will, has sponsored a series of audits for the towns within WestCog to help them ascertain where they are in terms of ADA compliance for municipal facilities and programs. And Darien, fortunately, was one of the first towns to be signed up for this audit process, which is underway right now. What this audit result or audit report that we're going to get is going to help us do is provide a roadmap as to how we could improve accessibility in municipal buildings, but also ensure that any kind of programming we offer, any town or municipal meetings, all of those things are just more accessible to anyone who's got a particular disability. And so that audit will lay out a roadmap for us to get there, and we look forward to working through that roadmap to make town government more accessible for all. So one of the things that's still in progress, but only until this Friday, May 23rd, is that there is an audit questionnaire that's been prepared. So if you or anyone in your household has a particular disability that perhaps the town could work to accommodate so that you could participate more fully in government and more fully in the programs that we offer, we want to hear from you. You can access that survey through the town's website. And on the video of this meeting, I'll have Jim Cameron put in the QR code as well as the link to that survey. So if you are interested and have not completed that survey, please reach out to our office here and we'll make sure you get connected. I had a meeting the other day with representatives who are main leaders for the swap shop. So the swap shop is a very popular and important feature in our town. It gives you an opportunity to repurpose things that might normally have been just tossed away in the trash or at the transfer station. So we are having a challenge right now in terms of getting enough volunteers for the swap shop, particularly folks really willing to provide leadership. So if you are interested at all in participating or helping to run the swap shop or help us with that, we really would appreciate it. Please reach out to me and let me know if you're interested in that. A couple other updates. I had the privilege, along with Jamie Stevenson and a number of folks, to be a judge with the Shark Tank at the Darien High School. So these were young people who had come up with business ideas, and it was a replica of the Shark Tank program where we judged those ideas and then offered up some funding. And I have to say it was a lot of fun to do that. As I tell other people, I'm glad that I'm my age and not young like those people are, because I don't know how I would compete with them. They're all so smart and talented and good looking and all of that. And I don't know what I would do if I was that age and trying to compete with all those smart young people. So congratulations to everybody who was involved in that. It was a lot of work and a lot of fun for them, I'm sure. This past Monday, as I said in my newsletter a week ago today, I had an opportunity to sit down with Governor Ned Lamont for lunch, and he and I met one-on-one for an hour, and it was an illuminating conversation. I'll let you all read the newsletter in terms of topics we talked about, but I just wanted to personally thank the governor for both coming to Darien and sitting down and talking with me. I had a chance to talk a lot about what we're doing here in Darien to make not just this town better, but to respond to important really things that are issues across the state around things like energy, but also things like affordable housing. And on these major topics, the governor has been quite thoughtful. And frankly, I don't see a lot of daylight between how he's thinking about a number of these topics and how I think. So I came away quite impressed with what he had to say. He is thoughtful, he is sharp, he is on his game, and a very competent and thoughtful person. So I think we are well served by what he's done for the state, and it was a privilege to get to know him. So I thanked him and his office for arranging that. And then I guess that's all I have to say on my first Selectman update. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, moving right along to our board liaison reports. Monica, Great Island.
Okay, Great Island, we had a fantastic fourth community engagement on Saturday. We had a terrific showing. I want to thank Linda O'Leary and Karen Dunn for their help in working on the bus schedule. We had a pivot because of the potential rain, although it did turn out to be a beautiful day, but that's okay. And we covered a lot of material at that meeting. We are not, the first three community engagements included a survey. There is no survey attached with this one. So the presentation should be up on the Great Island website tomorrow and on the Darien website, our town website. And we're asking folks if you attended the presentation or if you're watching the video from 79, TV 79, and you have any thoughts, to reach out by June 1st. so that we can take those into consideration. Just want to give a little heads up that beach stickers at Pear Tree. So a lot of people walk to Great Island from Pear Tree, and you'll need a beach sticker starting May 23rd, which is Friday. You can get them in Town Hall, or you can go online and get them. Or if you had a sticker from last year, that sticker is still valid through May 31st. So heads up on that one. And then tomorrow, in the library, the Darien Museum and GIAC and the library are looking forward to a presentation from George Knight, Knight Architecture, who's an integral member of the Reed Hildebrand team that'll be discussing the Great Island's architecture. So that starts at 7 o'clock, and I'm sure it'll be really, really interesting. So hope to see you there. Thanks.
Terrific, thank you. Marcy.
Sure. Mental Health Task Force, just a quick update. Allie Ramsek is going to be doing QPR training, which is the question, persuade, and respond. That is a quick hour and a half, 2-hour class. And it really is to help people that are dealing with somebody who's in a crisis and to do immediate action on it. That will be held on June 3rd from 12:30 to 2 at the Mather Center. There are 35 spots, but 25 of them are going to be reserved for our seniors. So there's 10 spots available at this point for anyone who's not a senior citizen. So if you're interested, definitely sign up soon. And once, maybe a week before or so, and we don't have signups for 25 seniors, they'll open it up to anybody else. But usually that class fills up very fast. She does it every other month. But going into the summer, I think it's really great for anybody who has not had that training done to get that done.
Okay, terrific, thank you. Sarah.
I have some short updates tonight. The Thriving Youth Darien meeting was last Thursday morning, and unfortunately I have not had an opportunity to get the meeting minutes yet and have discussion about that. So I will give an update at the next meeting. I was not able to attend. And the Hindley Homes and Royal Building Committee will next meet this coming Wednesday on Zoom at 6 p.m. Things have been moving along, and things seem to be going very well. If anyone has any questions regarding the building progress, let us know, but take a drive around town. It's exciting. It's going to be another, but a little less than 18 months before everything is finished. But as there's still some demolition to do of some old libraries, and they're building those wings and the courtyards, but it is exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, kudos to you and the rest of that group. And I know under the leadership of Jill and Chris, there was a public officials tour of those improvements here the other day. Really impressive to see how quickly they're moving. And you can start to see how the classrooms and spaces are taking shape. They're going to be first rate. It's exciting, I was amazed. Yeah. It is pretty exciting. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
Great. Mike.
Good evening. The Blight Review Board met on May 14th, and we went through the properties on the list with no real status change. We continue to monitor 8 properties now that have blight, and we continue to try and work with the particular residents where we can to get the violations resolved. Our next meeting will be June 11th.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any questions on any of our updates? Okay, Jennifer, do we have any public comments this evening or anyone wishing to speak?
We have not received any public comment by email, but there are quite a few people on here. So if you want to go through the process for them to make comment, or else I could do that.
I think that would be fine. I do not see anyone raising their hands. I give it a minute here, but that's okay. Okay, so no public comments. That's fine. We can move on. So first up is old business. Says here, discuss and take action on updated revisions to the Darien Harbor ordinances and recommend to the representative town meeting. So the reason this is on the agenda is that when we voted previously to approve and recommend to the RTM a set of revisions to the ordinances. So when that happened, the team that's working on those ordinances did some additional editing. Most of it was cleanup editing and adjusting a few words so that the language fit better and all of that stuff. And so the team had the idea that said, well, before the RTM really picks up the ball and starts to review all this, maybe the best thing to do would be to start with these revised ordinances. In other words, the revisions that were made after we had our vote earlier, and that would make the RTM process more efficient because they could get started with these updated versions. In talking to members of that team, as well as some members of the RTM, it's clear that a better way to do this is simply go back to what we approved originally. And so in everybody talking, we're talking about the original version of the ordinance where they are right now. Then there's version 1 of the revisions. That's what we voted on to approve previously. And the idea was that we were going to vote tonight to approve a version 2 to go to the RTM. But there's a good view that said, look, the better way to do this, let's just stick with version 1 and let the RTM start their work and the committees start their work at that point. So based on those discussions, I'm convinced that that's reasonable. So what I would propose is that we vote to table this action and simply affirm that we stand by our vote for version 1 and to recommend to the RTM that they simply do what we voted to recommend at our prior meeting and just get started with version 1. So that would be my motion, that we vote to table this, which would allow our previously approved version 1 to stay in place for the RTM to consider. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Could I get a motion to table the old business to take up updated revisions to the Darien Harbor ordinances? Okay, Sarah moves. Mike seconds. All in favor? Okay, so we will table that. Thank you. All right, next up is a couple of transfers. So the first transfer is to discuss and take action on a request to transfer $50,000 from the Nature Center driveway for a traffic study at Cherry Lawn. So I've had, I don't know, a dozen conversations on this in the last couple of days. And I think where I come out is as follows. And one of the conversations I had was with Sarah. She actually raised this directly with me, but some others have done this as well. So the idea here is that we definitely need to look at traffic flows on Cherry Lawn at some point. Certainly from my end, I don't want to spend a lot of money on pavement and parking and whatever ends up being recommended there until we've done a pretty careful study. So I think that'll be important at some point. But a number of people have raised the notion, and I think very good idea, that before we even do that, it might be a good strategy to take a broader look at our park programs. And so the idea here would be to say, all right, we've got obviously visitors to our park, which we don't control, but we have a lot of work and important work that our Parks and Rec departments professionals do that defines programs, sporting activities, as well as just other events that are connected with our parks. And what it might be good for us to do is to take a step back and take stock of all those things and try to understand what the volume of those programs is, how many people participate in them and when, and how does that look when you balance it across all of our parks? Because we may find that the current approach that we have for developing and pushing out these programs could use some refinement. I also think it's a good idea because we have a relatively new parks director in place, Jen Fava. She has been in her seat now about a year. And I think if we were to let her come in and explain to not just us, but Parks and Rec Commission, others, where she stands after having been in her seat for a year on this broader question, I think it actually would be a good idea. So where I am on this, and I'd like Sarah to chime in as well, where I am on this is it feels like a good idea to table the idea of funding this traffic study at this moment, and instead take the step back like I've described to maybe do a broader assessment of things and use that assessment to inform and structure any kind of traffic study that we might do on Cherry Lawn, or frankly, maybe other parks that may come up there as well. Sarah, we've had a good conversation about this a couple of times. Can you add in or?
I would love to. And if you don't mind, I do have some notes. I have talked to some people and I spent about an hour and a half at Cherry Lawn yesterday. So I would love to go through. So
please do.
Without moving too fast and without taking too much time, I will go through. I do appreciate, and building off of what John has said, we do want to take a look at the programming and the pieces over at Cherry Lawn in particular, it's essential to take a step back and look at this with a very strategic lens. We want to pay attention to the programming, but also making sure that we preserve some green space there while taking care of the park itself and paying attention to our fiscal responsibility. Starting with fiscal responsibility, we want to make sure that this process by which we fund these things is obviously very important and to be as transparent as possible. This funding was originally approved for the driveway repaving. In my eyes, and I know and some others have mentioned, the transfer that's being proposed for this reallocation towards the traffic study, this pivot, it does contradict the original intent of the funding, and the redirection of the funds should be returned and looked at for approval through a different matter, another appropriation, not as a transfer. This ensures the accountability and transparency for our residents. Moving to the programming piece, which is the most important piece, I think the town wants to look at this foundational question. And are we designing our programs to match our assets, or are we developing our assets to match the programming? Now, we have some incredible properties in this town, and our facilities are finite. We want to make sure that these programs reflect these finite facilities and make sure that we don't overuse them. We want to use this programming as a community building tool and for our residents to access the parks, but not as a revenue generator. And as such, the scale of the programming, we want to make sure it's evaluated based on sustainability, making sure we're not overusing a field or such, to make sure that our parks maintain their incredible, beautiful atmosphere that people enjoy. Yesterday I was over at Cherry Lawn, just a typical Sunday. There were people who were, some children over by the pond. There were people in the green space. There were kids playing a pickup game of basketball, people in the community gardens, people on the playground. There was a soccer activity going on. And it's a beautiful park. And we want to make sure that it allows folks to enjoy the beauty as well as the ability to maintain some programming there. But when we do the excessive programming, it does it does create some increased wear and tear, particularly on the fields or public infrastructure, such as the bathrooms and such. And we want to make sure that we don't create more maintenance and staffing issues or overcrowding, and particularly the traffic congestion, which I think is a major issue for some folks. We want to make sure that we don't diminish this access to the green space that we have in the front. We want to make sure that we're building this philosophy of scalable programming. Moving back towards the financial piece a little bit, we want to make sure that we're not using these excessive funds for the traffic study, because it will raise some questions regarding capital planning. This was a project that was not in our plans, and pushing this towards it, even as exploratory, it can have a potential to move into a larger capital request. I know some folks reached out. They're very concerned because oftentimes we'll do a traffic study before we do a capital project. And so they're very concerned, what does this mean? For me, what I want to make sure is, if we step back and take a look at this programming and see what we're doing, I want to make sure that we're looking at things strategically, not moving forward without, as John has mentioned, making sure that we take a look and paying attention to how we're doing things. We want to make sure that we're not doing these projects without taking a very careful look. As it is an off-cycle request, in a year that we've had an increase in mill rate and an increase in debt service, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to getting ourselves into a project that financially is not prudent at this particular time. These resources that we have in this town are not unlimited. And we want to make sure that we're not trying to address symptoms of an issue, which could be due to programming over concentration. We want to make sure that we're not looking at making sure that our sites, such as Cherry Lawn, are not over-programmed when other sites, maybe such as Highland Park or Town Hall Field, are empty. And if we could possibly shift some of this programming, it may alleviate some of this congestion, and it may allow our parks to not have some over wear and tear. And we want to look at, what does it look like if we, for example, I believe Ninja is at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. If that were at Cherry Lawn, and that timing is very difficult, kids are coming out of school, some are going into the playground, there's some soccer programs going on, if we were to shift some of this programming, would that alleviate some of the congestion and some of the concerns regarding traffic? And as a part of that, what I have suggested to John and talk with him about is I would like to see us do a field study. This is something that we've talked about with the Board of Ed. This is something that we've talked about at this Board of Selectmen. We want to make sure that we are looking holistically at all of these fields. I know that sometimes there's programming for fields up at the high school, and the high school is already overcrowded with many activities, and the same sometimes can happen at Cherry Lawn when we have other fields in this town that are not being utilized. And so I want to make sure that we're looking at things carefully and that we're not trying to say, well, gosh, this is such a great field, let's just have everything there. No, we need to make sure that timing wise, we're paying attention to, is this a busy time of day? Is there another field that we could use that might alleviate some of this congestion? I think it's really important. And then by taking a step back and looking at all of the programming, and I really do want to understand, I talked to John about this, can we take a look and see the programming? How many people have registered for the programs in a particular month? Is it, pickleball? Is it tennis? Is it these children's programs such as Ninja? Is it soccer? And I know we have many other groups in this town that use the fields, Darien Soccer, Darien Little League. I know Darien Youth Lacrosse is on some of our fields, and they might just be only in the school field, so I apologize if I've said that. But I think it is important. Look, as a parent who's had kids in all of these programs, we have some incredible facilities, and I'm grateful to be able to use them. We just want to make sure that we're doing this smartly. Without understanding our current capacity and the usage patterns, I think it's too early to be looking at any capital fixes. So we need to be looking at doing a database kind of evidence analysis and looking at kind of the programming and the numbers and making sure that we're looking at a full inventory and use analysis as far as all the fields, the town and the Board of Ed field, as I mentioned, and the open spaces. We want to make sure, are we over programming, and how do we know that? How many people are at a particular site? I know that there's a program that we're looking to be using soon, Placer AI, and that'll help us to actually manage the traffic patterns and have us to be able to see how many cars are there, how many people are there with the cell phone data. I think it'll allow us to identify timing issues, and we can then look back and see what's going on at that time. Is it a programming? Is it just a beautiful day and everyone's out at the park? We want to make sure that we're doing things right and making sure that we're not overloading ourselves. And we want to definitely use these assessments to guide our next plan of conservation and development. I know we haven't done it, I think, in a few years, but I think it's critical to look at this data as we plan our park use and our, as our future in these parks. As this is a townwide review, it's not a park by park exercise, and also working with the Board of Ed, we're not living in silos here. We want to make sure that this is very strategic, and we're coordinating with the schools and Darien Soccer and Darien Little League and the Nature Center and everything. I think it's really important that we make sure that we're all kind of working together. I know that I'm suggesting a kind of large study, but I do feel very strongly that this is something that we haven't done yet, and we've talked about it for many years, and I do think it's crucial. So I think it'll allow us to make sure that we're not overloading our spaces. At the times that I've gone to Cherry Lawn, I know people are sitting in the green space, right? We've seen teens there the other day reading a book, and I want to make sure that those spaces are also preserved, that we're not leaving that piece out of it also. So to conclude, I appreciate your time in listening. This is not about one park. I know I've said Cherry Lawn is used as an example, and I apologize. I don't mean to isolate that and to hold that up as the only issue. And it's also not just about the town, it's about the Board of Ed. We want to make sure that we're being very strategic in this townwide look. So I appreciate it. So we want to make sure that we're respecting the process of the financial aspects. We want to make sure that we're balancing the programming and coordinating with everyone and using that data. So thank you very much. We want to make sure that we're just optimizing our assets. So thank you so much for listening.
Sarah, I appreciate that. Monica, Marcy, or Mike, questions, reactions, or additions? Mike?
Yeah, I think that there's logic in doing a comprehensive field study before the traffic study, because the reality is if a traffic study told us that we need to make substantive changes in the traffic flow at Cherry Lawn, one of the things we'd want to know is, well, before we spend money on capital projects to do that, is there an alternative way? And by doing a field study and seeing where there might be openings to take some of the programming or some of the sports out of Cherry Lawn and into other places would probably be helpful. So I'm in favor of tabling the study until we have a very solid usage study. But with this caveat, my personal observation has been that when the youth soccer games are occurring at Cherry Lawn, and there are multiple games and they're back to back to back, is when you see a high volume of cars going in and coming out and picking up children, and their grandparents are walking across, the small walkways to the parking lots, and there's flow going in and out. So it might make sense, not for $50,000, but to send some people from the town over to observe how that goes on those youth soccer days with coming in and coming out, because that might be a problem that can be addressed before we get a field study done or before we consider traffic studies. The ability, if you created greater gaps between games going on, and I don't know what they are now, but that might be something that would be more easily done and more quickly done to address some of those issues.
Thank you, Mike. Monica or Marcy? Monica.
We're talking about Cherry Lawn, but unfortunately, we do have a lot of other park assets in town and Highland. So, but you know what? I'm not an expert in this, and we do have two experts on the call right now. So I would really like to hear what Lori and Jen think about this before I go any further.
Sure. Lori?
Jen, I'd like you to start first because you are closest to knowing what happens in terms of the usage requests we have, the needs by Little League Soccer, and what options we do or don't have to move things. You and your staff are dealing with that every day. So I think that would probably be the best starting point. We already know that everything else in the park is there. The pickleball courts are there. The tennis courts are there. The gardens are there. The nature center is there. The baseball field is there. Those things are not proposed for any kind of movement or change. So the flex point seems to be the programming, the demand we have to provide the programming to our children, and whether there are options to move those. So I think that really is the starting place. And Jen clearly is going to be closest to that with the staff because they're the ones who are juggling this.
Sure. So in terms of programming and timing, really most of our facilities are used out. We're booked. That's why we're at these places. And I know a lot of people keep saying, go to Highland. There have already been things that we've tried to move and take out of Cherry Lawn if possible. But again, at Highland, we are restricted in terms of what we can do there by the special permit. So it's not as though it's a space that we can just go and program fully. I think it is important, as Lori said, those facilities are there. There is a lot of usage that is not, that's not something that's programmed, right? The playground, we can't control. We have no idea how many people are going to be on the playground each and every day. And I've been there many times when there are not sports going on and there is no parking. People are parking every which way. We put rocks down in certain areas to try to protect the tree roots in one spot because it's just craziness. The gardens, we don't know. There's 60 to 65 gardens there. We don't know when those people are coming. There are people that play on the tennis courts and on the pickleball courts that aren't there at a theoretically programmed time. There are people that are just walking in the park and enjoying the park. So all of that is something that we definitely want to continue. None of this is being looked at in terms of expanding any of the usage. It's what's there. How do we make it more accessible? Again, this isn't strictly about traffic flow. It's also about circulation and pedestrian circulation right now, and also ADA accessibility. Right? As was said, right now, there's no accessible routes to the tennis courts, to the pickleball courts, to the basketball court, to the gardens, or to the fields. So those are all things that we need to make fix and make appropriate. I mean, I walk by many times, you're driving in and there's someone pushing a stroller in the roadway because there's no other way to get from point A to point B. Again, there is also significant use by the Nature Center. There's traffic that's incurred with that, their programs, their events. You know, and I know there have been some times we've had to work with them about changing sort of, you know, their start time or their drop off time, things along those lines. So in most cases, we from our department have been trying to put as little there as possible in terms of actual programmed use. Actually, the high school tennis team also uses those tennis courts. So the stuff that's there is there, and we don't anticipate that moving anywhere. There really aren't other places for us at this time to move them to. And I think the information that you're talking about, along with the Placer AI, the information we'll be able to use and gather from Placer AI, because that won't tell us how people are using the park, how they are circulating, whether it's in the vehicle or pedestrian wise. So that's why you need the study being done and people there and observing it, who are engineers. One of the things that they would also be doing is looking ahead, looking at the new housing developments and things that are coming online so they can kind of plan for the additional influx of residents that we would anticipate. So, I mean, that's kind of where we're at. Just trying to look at some of my notes to see, but I think those are the main points that I would make, but you know, that this is for not just the flow of vehicular and pedestrian traffic, it's also for accessibility, for safety, and also addressing the needs. We might find that there's just, if we just organize something in a bit more of an efficient way, we don't need to add too much in terms of parking, additional parking or things like that. It may simply be changing traffic patterns. But we won't know that until we do this. So I guess I'll turn it back to Lori unless you have something else that you think I have missed.
Any questions for Jen?
Sarah.
Hi, Jen.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be able to talk to you on this, and I appreciate it. I guess the question I have is, if we have the data on some of the programming, particularly the games or the practices, so on, you know, for Darien soccer, and we have that information, I guess my question is, why are we spending $50,000 when we may be able to have that information already on hand? You know, we know the programming information. We know the number of people that are using the programs for Darien soccer. Can we use that information instead of spending the $50,000? That's the piece that I think I'm concerned about. If we could take and tap into the data that we already have, I think that would be kind of most efficient, instead of trying to say that we, you know, I think we have information. I think we have the data. And I also wonder, you mentioned that, so the programs that are cherry lawn are the ones that are there, that, so are you saying that it's not possible? I get Highland has restrictions 100%. So I totally appreciate that. And I don't know necessarily that all programs could go there, but there might be other places other fields that might be able to be used. Is there anything that might be usable in place of maybe using the cherry lawn for programming, given the fact that there is a lot of traffic? As you mentioned, there's people there a lot of time. Is there another place that we could use that, like Weed has that green space there? Maybe, I don't know, like maybe there's other places that we could use that have a better inflow and outflow.
Well, in terms of, I think we have looked at that where we've been able to move some. We did move them. I know everyone thinks, town hall and everything, soccer and baseball, they're already sharing those spaces. We have put lacrosse there. So everything is kind of jam-packed in. Now on a given day, might you go by and see something open at a specific time? Yes, because we give them sort of their block allocations. So, but if something were to work out, what has happened is the different organizations work together, right? So if we needed a time, there was a program that we were looking to do, and at town hall, soccer and baseball were already sharing the field. So we reached out, and that's because it would have normally been baseball, but they can spare the outer area. So they coordinate and work with soccer to let them use it. So with those two uses, there just wasn't enough space, because then we also run into issues of traffic on Renshaw, right? Because everybody parks and it turns into craziness, and we have to address that. So there are issues everywhere we go, and I think that's part of the issue, is because everything is so highly subscribed and already being utilized. We were lucky in one spot to be able to then go and use Hinley, which now was not big enough for a field, but there was a little space, so we
I
were
know
able
it's coming
to.
back. I'm sorry.
So-
Give it like a year. I'm sorry.
So, we are getting there. But I think there were issues even before the project started of trying to have enough time and to grow. And again, some of the stuff, we aren't doing additional programs that we might want to do because there is no space, and we don't want to throw it in at Cherry Lawn. Weed, I think right now, the way that space is set up, it would not be conducive. I mean, again, we would just, it's not, I would say, it's not flat enough. It's not, you'd want to make sure that there aren't ruts. It's not all wavy, or however you want to call it. If we're going to have kids kind of running around and things like that, we'd want to make sure that that's addressed. And at this moment, it's not done that way. I think this is all information. I don't believe this is information that Weston and Sampson was going to be collecting. I think this is stuff that we would provide to them anyway. And I think, again, as I was saying, I think our usage information that would be provided is a tool for them. Placer AI would be a tool for them. Again, we need all the nature center information as well. Clearly, they would have to be involved, because what they're doing also impacts the use of Cherry Lawn. I hope that answered your question. If I didn't, let me know.
No, I think it does. I think in general, I'm leery of spending money on something that we may be able to do. And I think we do need, this is my opinion, that we need to really sit down. Maybe we have a room where we have someone from Board of Ed. We have, Chris Manfredonio and whoever's managing some of the fields there, and yourself and members of your team, and Darien Soccer and Darien, we need to sit down. Maybe we're all over subscribing, and it's lovely that the kids can sign up for so many programs. But we need to make sure that we're just managing our assets, because it does beget the traffic issue. And as the weather is warmer, people are going to be using these parks more, and it is really hard. I know that you have a difficult job, and I don't want to make it seem like, geez, Jen, if you just did X, you'd have Y. And please understand. I think in general, I got a lot of feedback this weekend. I know John did, and I know people are very concerned. So I think maybe it's time that we look at and how can we take the data that we have, how can we take the field study, and how can we use that? I think would be a good question.
Yeah, I think the data we have can inform program quantity and program balance. across our parks, and it is not going to inform a traffic study. So when the day comes for that, and we're about to make a big investment in terms of paving or parking or any kind of physical reconfiguration of the space, we do not have the data to do that, and we're going to need some professional help for that. That I'm not in favor of spending money on pavement unless we've got that perspective, but doing some pre-work before, kind of as you suggest, Sarah, I think is something we certainly consider. Lori, reactions to any of this?
Just in terms of the pre-work, the value in that is if the staff and the professionals really feel that there are underutilized field assets or the change in maybe scheduling. But in my time working with Jen and Pam before her, that is not what we have heard, which doesn't mean we can't look at it again. Fields also need off time to rest, so they don't get damaged. So I believe, Jen works with the people at the Board of Ed and the different places that have the property now to figure out, okay, where can we put these people? Where can we put those people? But again, there are programs like the baseball program needs every field they can get. They're still going to be playing baseball at Cherry Lawn. That I don't really see that changing or really anywhere else that they can go. But what we're really thinking about this is the configuration of the road in Cherry Lawn and the parking spaces. I mean, I've been in town 36 years. I believe it's been that way the whole time. Meanwhile, the park is used more because our population has grown. Our population is going to continue to grow. You all have heard me talk about that till I'm blue in the face about, the demands on the, parks with all of the new apartments coming online. The Nature Center is much more active than it was some years ago. They've expanded their program. So we've added more to this park, but we really haven't invested the time to get professional help. This is not something that Jen has the skill set to do. And this is not a diss against Jen. She's a wonderful Parks and Rec person, but she's not an engineer who knows how to look at layouts to say, is there a way that we can make this work, more safely and efficiently? And that's really what we were thinking about. I've been there on weekdays when school's in session and there's not a parking space. I don't even know where people are, but so, that's what we were thinking about. And my recollection is there was a request from the Nature Center to pave their area of the parking lot. And that was, set aside, I believe, by the selectmen, but don't hold me to it, but and saying, let's get the traffic study first. Let's not spend money paving until we kind of understand what the best layout is. And if professionals can tell us, is there a better flow or layout? Now, more recently, as John mentioned earlier, we know that there's going to be some suggestions coming to improve accessibility. So I think we were trying to fit all those pieces together. Work like this needs to be done either in the spring or the fall, really during the peak period. So if we don't go now, then we would have to wait probably till at least the fall. So if that's what y'all want to do, but it's really thinking about how the park is used now. This is not about adding more to the park. We realize that it's a very well used and very well loved, beautiful park. It's just a magnificent park, but we're trying to really look if, we can make it flow better, put better sidewalks and crossing in, because that road is very narrow. So again, if you're trying, you've got cars coming two ways and somebody trying to push a stroller, there really just isn't room. And someone who was pushing a stroller this weekend, I know when you're pushing a stroller, you're very, very concerned about, safety and room and stuff. So those are the things we're thinking about from that perspective. So that's really, what the thought had been.
So having just come off the tail end of having 3 kids that have gone through the soccer programs and pretty much every park and rec program at Cherry Lawn over the course of the last 10 years, I think I'm probably pretty close to this, as I've definitely had parking issues and a child running through the parking lot in between 2 parked cars and trying to get to practice and then running through parked cars to get to their mom. So I definitely agree that a traffic study needs to be done there. It is dangerous. I think it's an accident waiting to happen. I don't foresee that park is going to get any less busy than where it is. The only question I do have is we are in the middle of 3 major renovations at the elementary schools. Those properties are not being used. So if we throw $50,000 at a traffic study right now at Cherry Lawn, which I still think it's going to be incredibly busy, I still think that there's going to have to be some renovations made to that. Is it a true indication of how that park is going to be used? in 18 months when we do have fields available at these 3 elementary schools. Now, I'm not saying that I don't think that that work is still going to need to be done, because when I was there 5 years ago and 6 years ago, when there was not, you know, these construction projects happening, there still was the issue. So I don't think that it's increased so much over the course of the last 18 months that those properties have been taken offline. But are we going to get an appropriate read on the traffic studies and on the park use if we did this now versus if we punted this to 12 months from now when we have live elementary schools that can, those fields can come back into play. I agree. I definitely think that renovations need to happen at Cherry Lawn. It's as Lori has said, and as Jen is learning, these complaints have been coming in for 15, 20 years about how dangerous the traffic flow is there. Ideally, it probably should have one way in and one way out, if I was just to try to use my engineering brain, because you've got way too many people and way too many cars that are passing through, way too many passengers walking. But I'm not sure if right now is the right time, considering there are so many other parks that are under construction over the course of the next 2 years. So, food for thought.
Monica, comments?
Well, I like the overall idea of assessing all of our parks in general. I think that's a good idea. I do think that the the stroller issue, I'm sure you've considered a sidewalk. If you haven't, there's an idea. The ADA is concerning. I guess I want to know like what we're going to do to address that, if we are going to hold off on doing anything longer term on this. But we've heard overall an overall assessment of our facilities and what we offer is a good idea. So I'm in favor of that. But the ADA is concerning, especially with the audit.
Okay. I think I stand by my original recommendation, which I think we ought to take a step back and look at some of these issues before we charter that study. I think a number of good points have been raised around sort of timing of when we would do this study, what we could learn from some preliminary groundwork, if you will, to answer a few of the questions that Sarah and others have posed. I think Marcy raises a good point about the data we get from a traffic study when the school lots and playgrounds are kind of blocked, if you will, because of this construction. I don't think we lose a ton of time on this. As others have pointed out, some of these issues have been problems and concerns for 15, 20 years. So this is not like this is the first time any of this is coming up, but it'll give us a chance to make sure that when we do get to the point that a traffic study is ready to go, we've answered a lot of these questions, and we've used that process to build not just public support, but support in the other bodies that have got to approve this transfer. So I'm okay with the delay that comes from this, but I almost don't look at it as a delay. I think it's an addition to an overall approach to be clear about sort of where we're going with the parks and then how we need to make modifications to accommodate that. So I'm okay with that and with tabling this right now. Jen.
If I can just ask a question for clarification. So if we're looking to table this at this point, and as we gather this information, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you'd then be looking to put this into the budget requests for the next fiscal year, because then we wouldn't have anything not until this July, but it would be the following July of 26. Right?
Well,
In terms of timing?
Yeah, so I can't comment on construction timing other than to echo what Lori said about all of that. I think as a matter of sequencing, we go through this process of strategic clarification, if I were to call it something, just to have the dialogue to get a better sense from you as to where these parks are currently with programming, where you anticipate going, what you're seeing in terms of usage, both program usage and not program usage, and what learnings you have from all of that in terms of how it's spread and dispersed among our park facilities. I think coming out of that, we'll have a perspective about our physical park assets, which will include things like traffic and parking, but could also include other parks and other changes that we might make so that our physical facilities match what your vision is for programming across all parks. I think armed with that information, we'd come back to this board and say, all right, we now know this, and we've had several dialogues with you, say, over the course of the next 12 months. So we'd have a good sense from that as to say, and be able to say, all right, now we know a lot more than we did before. Let's actually target our traffic study resources in this way. And maybe it's Cherry Lawn, maybe it's some of our other parks, but in any case, we're going to be a lot better at scoping that study 12 months from now than we would be. Again, I know it delays that investment. So when you say we won't have anything, say, before the fall, I think what we'll have is a lot more clarity about what we need to do. The exact timing of that obviously is going to be delayed, but I think we'll get to a better answer as a result. Certainly one that has more support.
Right.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Sarah?
I think the only other thing I would say is thank you. Jen, I know that this is work that we're asking and we genuinely appreciate it. I know this is a lot of analysis. I know it will help also inform for this upcoming plan of conservation and development. It's going to tie into the use of the inventory and the assessment of our facilities and programming and open space and all of it. So thank you.
And
Yeah, I would add to that. Mike, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, thank you, for, taking this critical look. And I think having an idea of being able to look in whatever format you want to create. I mean, we hear all sorts of things. Well, soccer's here then the baseball people are here. Like if we could look at these fields and courts, because it means meaningless unless it also includes court usage, then we could literally see and have a complete look of the whole situation instead of like targeted considerations without like the full understanding of what's going on in each of these parks in terms of scheduling time. And obviously there's walk-up things that go on. That's fine. But I think that would be enormously helpful. So thank you.
Yeah. My thanks as well to Jen, but also Lori and her leadership of Parks and Rec and all the Parks and Rec commissioners, some of whom are on the call today. I do appreciate that. I think one thing I would add is that as a board, we owe Lori and Jen a crisper articulation of exactly what it is we're looking for. So what I would like to do is add to agenda review for our next meeting and maybe the meeting after that, some further discussion with this board about exactly what it is we're looking for and what problem we're trying to solve, or what are we worried about that we feel we don't know right now that we'd like to get an answer to. And we'll work with Lori and Jen to get those answers. But we should, it's one thing to say we need to table this because we don't have enough information. I think it's quite another thing to say very specifically, what are we looking for? So that when they do this additional work, to Sarah's point, when we get it back, it's what we need and what other boards will need in order to approve this. And as I said, we owe it to them to be much more clear about that, and we're not there today. So I would like to add that to agenda review, and I would ask maybe Sarah, you and I could collaborate to come up with some draft talking points to be
I'd love to.
crisp and clear about what we want, and we will review that
100%.
at the next meeting. So, okay. All right, so could I get a motion, please, to table the request for $50,000 for the Cherry Lawn traffic study? Mike moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor?
Can I just
Okay,
ask
thank-
one thing though, John? You're
Sure,
tabling
please.
it because this was not a new funds request. This was a transfer. Those funds will be gone on June 30th. So just want to make that clarifying point. This was not new money. This was the transfer from the paving because we were told to hold off on the paving until we did the traffic study.
Well, I'll let Jennifer Charneski in where these funds are. These are appropriated funds, and so we could clean out these accounts and move that, but I don't think that's necessary, actually. Jen,
So
can you chime in?
this is a capital project, so it doesn't automatically close out on June 30th. But if the paving work is done, when we do capital closeouts, which we usually do around September. The unused funds would close out to the Board of Finance Capital Reserve, and then a transfer could be requested from there. And yes, to Lori's point, there was a traffic study requested in the fiscal 25 budget for Cherry Lawn in conjunction with, I think it was about $200,000 for paving. And the Board of Finance reduced the paving to $75,000 with the intention of just patching as needed and doing a more comprehensive study of Cherry Lawn before committing to paving the driveway. So Lori, to your point, yes, funds would still be available to transfer. They might not be coming, depending on timing, they might not be coming from the Nature Center if we close that out. But also in terms of this being a brand new request, it was discussed as part of the fiscal 25 budget process.
Okay, in any case, the funds will still be there, but as I said, I think this additional groundwork will help build support for that effort. Okay, other questions or comments? Okay, could I get a motion, please, to table the request for $50,000 for the Cherry Lawn traffic study?
Actually, you already took your vote on that.
Yeah.
Oh, we did. I'm sorry, we did do that. Yes, you're right. My bad. Okay. All right. I appreciate the discussion. I think we've ended up in a good place. Next item up is to discuss and take action on a request to transfer $61,436 due to the reorganization of staffing for the Mather Senior Center. Jennifer.
This is actually a fiscal 26 transfer, but I wanted to get it to you now just to let you know what we have going on with the Mather Center. Ultimately, what this is doing is realigning salaries between the Mather Center and Human Services due to a restructuring, and moves unneeded salary funds of just under $40,000 over to the contingency account. The way this came about, Beth Paris retired effective April 1st. And with that change, she'd been there a long time. So we took the opportunity to evaluate the organization of the Mather Center. I met with the Human Resources Director. She and I were of the mind that it might make sense to put it under Human Services. And at the same time, Allie Ramsteck approached us saying this is what she's seeing in other communities. And she wanted to discuss the opportunity of it coming under her department. So we were all of a like mind. We looked at it. A couple reasons why it made sense. There's considerable overlap in the population that's served. When we dug into the job description for the Senior Center Director, a lot of the duties were really related to programming, not so much on the policy setting and administrative type director responsibilities. So what we are looking to do is put Allie, the director responsibilities, budget, policy setting, personnel management under Allie, and reclassify what they had as a part-time activities assistant to a full-time activities person. So they would continue to have a total of 4.4 FTEs, but their staff there would be focused explicitly on the programming with the oversight coming from the Human Services Department. I do think that this is going to allow for enhancement, aside from just continued provision of the services that they're doing. I think we're going to be able to enhance the services. I think there's a good synergy with the Human Services Department and what Allie would like to bring to the center. But that being said, in the first 6 months, her charge is to really observe and evaluate what the center does, learn what they do, but then really look at what is the outcome we're trying to achieve by providing the senior services there. What are the economics? What are we spending for programs? What are we charging? Is it the right cost recovery for programs, for lunches? Are we providing the right mix of programs that the members want and need? Those kinds of questions, which then she'll report back to me. And then also at that same time saying, do we have the staffing right with what we're moving to? And then any changes that come out of that, we would be able to incorporate into the fiscal 27 budget request.
I appreciate that. I particularly like the idea of spending some time really just observing what's going on down there and getting a sense of how the programs work, what the members think, what all of that before you start to make big changes is really good. A good move on her part. So questions for Jennifer on this?
Yeah, Jen, so when would this be in effect?
We made it effective with Ally in the director position May 12th, so a week ago today. And the activities assistant that was part-time went full-time as of today.
Okay, so they did take that. They took the full-time spot.
Yes.
Okay. And the program specialist, it was the activities assistant that we just filled that spot, right?
Right.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I have a lot of respect for Ally. So if she says that this is something she wants to pursue, I fully support it.
Yeah, she's very excited about it.
Other questions for Jen? Okay, could I get a motion, please, to approve a request to transfer $61,436 to support the reorganization of staffing for the Mather Center? Monica moves. Mike seconds. All in favor? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, a couple of appointments. We did an interview of a candidate for the Advisory Committee on Sustainability tonight in executive session. May I have a motion to appoint Abby Hausberg to the Advisory Committee on Sustainability for a term expiring on December 31st, 2025. Sarah moves. Marcy seconds. All in favor? Okay, thank you. All right, thanks to Abby for stepping up for this important committee. We really appreciate it. Next up is a reappointment of our Chief Building Officer. So some folks on watching today may not know that our Chief Building Officer is a gentleman named Mike Vitti. Mike has been with the town for many years and has served ably in that capacity for a long time. He is a great professional and a great friend to everybody here at Town Hall, and I like him a lot. He is a total character, but more than that, he's a 100% total professional and a very impressive man. So I think it's a great privilege to reappoint him as our Chief Building Official for a 4-year term. So could I have a motion, unless there's any discussion, could I please have a motion to appoint Mike Vitti as our Chief Building Official for a term expiring June 30th, 2029? Mike moves, Monica seconds. All in favor? Aye. If anyone would like to give some kudos to Mike, I would take that right now. But he's a tremendous professional, and thank you for all you do, Mike.
Yeah, real asset for the town.
Yep, first rate. Okay, we are now down to minutes. So could I took a look at our minutes from the regular meeting on May 5th, and they looked okay to me. Did anyone have any comments or edits on the minutes?
Nope. Okay,
could I get a motion to approve the minutes? The May 5th, 2025 regular meeting. Okay, Sarah moves, Marcy seconds. All in favor? Okay. Good deal. All right. Agenda review. I have here a review of the Norotan Heights development. So this is the Heights Crossing development, and we will get that on the calendar next. But now that we've gotten the flood updates out of the way, and as I said, we will put our add to agenda review articulating what we'd like the Parks and Rec Commission and Jen to focus on for this additional work that we contemplated today. Is there anything else that we should consider for agenda review? Okay. Our upcoming meetings, we've got the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, June 2nd, and then also for Monday, June 23rd. As we talked in previous meetings, we're going to, unless we need to convene, we'll do our summer meetings for June, July, and August by Zoom, so that folks can have some flexibility in their schedules for vacations. But again, if we do need to come together in person, we will arrange to do that. Anything else for the good of the order this evening? Okay, I appreciate everyone's participation. I thought it was a productive meeting, and thank you very much. Could I please get a motion to adjourn? Okay, Sarah moves, Marcy seconds. All in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you, friends.